You're the only one.
Don't go live just yet, Tammy. Not quite. So we have 5 from the city council that are here. Are you our alternate?
The mayor's our alternate.
Okay.
I specifically told her we didn't have enough people 2 days ago and that we needed her here, so,
I had
You're on. So I am calling to order the meeting of the Water Wastewater Task Force for Wednesday, August 26th. I am Deanna Gwen, Chair.
I'm Brian Martin, Public Works Director.
Linda Nishio, Council Ward 2.
Ken Gurley, citizen at large.
Henry Sarles with Ventor.
Alvarez, Public Works.
Toby LaFrance, Public Works.
Bagelson's from Financial Office.
Scott McClure, City Attorney.
John Latimer, I'm retired. I used to work for him when I was Chief Administrative Officer.
We work for the citizens of Marion County, John. That was-
I'm Julie Boyd. I'm the mayor of Salem. I'm the unnecessary alternate. The alternate.
Staff on this side.
Helena Nahar, Executive Assistant Brian Martin.
Oh, Tammy Carpenter, Mayor and City Manager's Office.
You're the mayor now?
No, in the Mayor
Oh,
and City
okay.
Manager's Office. Oh, I don't want to be the
Kevin Cameron, Marion County Commissioner. Adam's out here on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, Vang, Councilor Ward 6.
Alan Dannon, Public Works. Jason Pulley, Public Works.
Sage Barnard Davidson, Public Works.
Yvonne Staffy, Suburban East Water District.
And hopefully all of you have had an opportunity to review the minutes from our August 13th meeting. Oh, sorry, I forgot folks online. Tim, can we start with you?
Sure. This is Tim Wood. I'm with the City of Kaiser.
Deb,
Deb Gallardi, Gallardi Rothstein Group.
Toby?
And that's just me. I'm monitoring.
Perfect. And last but not least, Dr. Brown.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Irvin M. Brown here, Councilor Ward 5.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a motion to approve our minutes from the August 13th meeting?
I so move.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. So now we're moving on to action and discussion items regarding our stormwater master plan.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and kick this off. At the last meeting, we talked about our water master plan and our wastewater master plan, and we ran out of time for stormwater. So we're gonna pick it up there. We're gonna follow that with our CIP update. So really, the master plans are put together and then feed into the CIP. The CIP gives us a 5-year outlook at the projects that we need to complete. And then those roll into the budget that is approved annually by the city council. So those are gonna set the stage for what the utility needs going forward from a project perspective. From an operational perspective, we touched on the Detroit drawdown a little bit, the last meeting. We're gonna share a little bit more about what we've done to prepare for that. And then we're gonna talk about PFAS and biosolids and leachate and how we're handling that at our wastewater treatment plant. And that'll be some of the operational changes that affect the utility. And so the thought is that'll get all the information out on the table. And at the next meeting, we're gonna start talking about rates and programs. So that really, the next 3 meetings after this one will be where we make all the decisions on what our recommendations would be for rates. So that, Jason?
Thanks for that, Brian. Like you mentioned last meeting, we went through the wastewater collection system and the water system master plans. The third one that's currently in process is our stormwater master plan. This one is it's a little newer. It was last adopted by City Council in 2020. We tend to approach the stormwater master plan a little bit differently. So we have 12 stormwater basins within the city of Salem. It's very difficult to try to tackle all of those at once. And so what we've done, and you'll see a slide here in a second about, yeah, let's do that. Thank you. Oh, this is just a nice little graphic like that. Yeah.
Wow.
How many were around in 60?
I was around in that.
Around, but not here. Trying to get from Corvallis to Central Oregon.
At that time?
Yes.
So the stormwater system in the city is primarily focused on reducing flood risks to our citizens. For those of us that were around, I don't remember the 1964 flood. I came to Oregon right after the 96 flood. I was around during the response to the 2012 flood. And so for those of you who have been here, know that when it does flood, it can create a lot of problems for us. And so one of the things we do with our stormwater system is really try to reduce that flood risk. Now, we are very lucky in our system for a couple of reasons, but one is we have Detroit Dam and we have Big Cliff Dam. And we also have the entire system of 13 dams in the Willamette Valley system. And I think a number the Corps of Engineers throws around is the annual savings on property damage each year from those flood reduction measures is about $2 to $3 billion. So that's not just in property damage, but that's in farmland damage, damage that would occur along our streams and creeks and rivers. So we are very lucky that we have those dams to protect the valley from the flooding that we used to see. 1890, that one looks like a pretty good one. Even with those measures in place, we do still have occasional flooding because there's a lot of things that still come in below those dams. And we still have to manage our system to reduce those flood risks. An urban environment is really disruptive to the natural hydrologic process, right? So we have runoff from impervious surfaces. We have rainwater that's collected, that's put into our stormwater system. We generally have more shallow infiltration as opposed to a natural system where you have something like 40% evaporation of the water that falls, 10% runoff, right? In an urban environment, you see it's talking about 30% evaporation and 55% runoff. So in natural environments, the rain that falls and the snow that melts is dealt with by soil infiltration and natural runoff processes. In urban environments, that water is concentrated. And that concentrated water goes into our streams and creeks, which can create the flooding problems that we talked about. So in the Salem area, we manage 109 miles of streams within the city, 525 miles of stormwater, 7,000 stormwater manholes, weirs, backflow preventers, catch basins, green stormwater infrastructure. You might recognize those as it's like little created wetlands and parking lots and things like that. And all of that really is try to replicate the natural environment, allow nature to do its thing, collect that stormwater runoff into these natural swales and basins and allow that to infiltrate into the soil rather than send it through our pipes and into our creeks. And so that's one of the key things that we do to reduce the amount of flooding that we see in the city. So I talked about our basins and the unique approach that we take to our stormwater master plan. So we break our basins out into 12 individual watersheds. And what we've done in the past is we've taken 3 of those basins at a time and done what we call basin plans, which is we go in and we extensively look at what's needed in each of those basins. We do hydrological modeling. We look at flood water retention, runoff, You look at, the types of culverts and bridges and things like that that might be able to restrict the amount of water that's flowing down our creeks. And so once we go through that entire process, we put it all together in the stormwater master plan. And then on a 5-year cycle, we try to move through those basins again. So if you look on the screen, the green ones, sorry, they're not green, the green labels, right? So Mill Creek, Pringle Creek, Battle Creek, those were completed. We are finishing up phase 2, which is West Bank, Glen Gibson, and Upper Claggett, thank you. And that will be coming out next year. We'll move into phase 3, which is Croydon, East Bank, and Little Pudding. Thank you. Can't read through it. And you'll notice that some of them we're not really paying that much attention to, and it's not because we don't care about it, but some of these just have very little development opportunity. The Willamette Slough area, that's mainly Minto Island Park, right? So it's a natural system as it is. The Pettyjohn and the Laurel Basin, same thing. There's not a lot of development opportunity. There's not a lot of man-made structures or built environment out there. And the same with the Lower Claggett. So because of that, we don't necessarily model them to the same extent that we do the other basins, just because we don't have that built-out infrastructure, and we allow the natural processes to play out in those basins. So a recurring theme, if you remember from our water and wastewater talk, aging infrastructure. Even in our stormwater system, we're faced with aging infrastructure, undersized culverts and things like that that need to be addressed. All new development creates additional runoff. Like I said, we require green stormwater infrastructure on new developments now, so we try to reduce the amount of runoff that's coming into our system. We're trying to balance our environmental needs. So a lot of the streams that we manage are fish bearing. So we have to manage those natural areas for native fish. And then we have areas that have been developed in historically flood prone areas. So think about the areas around Mill Creek, right? So Mill Creek is a very flashy system. These are some of our priority basins that we try to address so we can reduce the flooding. And it's not as easy as, one of the problems with stormwater is that it ends up going somewhere. So if you reduce flood risks upstream, you're usually transferring it downstream. And so it's really a balancing act of how do you manage that system to provide benefits to the entire community without putting one group of residents at more risk than the other. And then the one that we're starting to see is climate and hydrology changes, right? So we are having more frequently intense storms, right? So we tend to get a lot of atmospheric rivers. They tend to put a lot of pressure on our stormwater system. They tend to put a lot of strain on our existing infrastructure. So as we do a lot of our modeling, looking at how we're going to build out our system in the future, we really have to pay attention to climate change. And I know we talked about that a little bit on the wastewater side when we talked about inflow and infiltration. We're seeing more and more frequent storms that bring a lot of rainfall into our system in a very, very short period of time. So in the Stormwater Master Plan, we've identified 220 capital projects for the next 20 years to reduce flood risk in the community. That 220 capital projects equals a total investment over 20 years of $470 million. And so a lot of these are increasing our capacity. A lot of them are addressing our aging infrastructure. A lot of them are building out some of our flood storage facilities. The old Battle Creek Golf Course is the prime example. And when that golf course closed, we purchased a large chunk of that. And one of the benefits that area provides is it provides a lot of off-channel flood storage during high wet weather events.
Jason?
Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is the 470 in today's dollars?
That is in
2024.
$2024, yes.
Wow.
So it's added another 15%.
Well, at least. Thank you.
I can't keep up with inflation. So one of the things we do, and we've done this in all of our master plans, we look at really what our short-term needs are, because when you just start throwing these numbers around, 400 million for stormwater, 250 million for wastewater, 600 million for water, right? There's no way, I don't think you're going to get us the rates that will support that kind of funding effort. So we look at what our short-term needs going to be, and we do that like we do in our other plans, which is we look at where those growth potential areas going to be, what type of development we think is going to come, and what are some of the key projects that we think we get the most benefit out of with the dollars that we have invested. $173 million is what we projected the need is over the next 5 years. Currently, the CIP has budgeted $17.8 million in the 5-year CIP, 5-year total for stormwater. So again, this is one of the ongoing issues, right? Our needs are really great. Our ability to fund them is not keeping up. Yes, sir.
Does the state help you? I mean, the state seems to want to have you build more housing all over the place, but they help you with the clear cost of all the infrastructure that has to be built in when you build all those homes.
So one of the pressures that we're under is right. So we have a housing production strategy. We have the message that's coming from the governor about houses that the state wants to see built in a year. One of the things we've been really impressing on the state legislature is, there might be incentives for developers, right? So we've adopted some changes in our zoning that allows middle housing. We've adopted some changes that make it easier for single family, multifamily, and cottage type of homes to be built. What's not come along at that equal amount is the infrastructure that's required to support it. So as you all probably know, we collect system development charges, SDCs, that are supposed to support that growth. Again, SDCs aren't keeping up with the cost of putting in that infrastructure. So one of the things we really wrestle with is how do we encourage housing by, while still keeping up with the additional needs in the system, the aging infrastructure, the other growth issues that we're seeing. And then you have a development that might come in that's going to require new sewer, new water, new stormwater infrastructure. And we are trying to, impress to them that it's great to encourage housing, and we all know we need it, but that money has to come from somewhere. And it's hard to put it on the back of our ratepayers when it's the developers that are coming in and that are benefiting from this infrastructure that we're putting in place. So short answer is no, they have not really figured out a way to fund infrastructure improvements to support the housing that the state is pushing.
Jason, I just want to clarify, they did pass some funding authorizations, right, for some projects. I know that people were able to put in grant applications to the state requesting some funds. I thought some of those got approved, but it was just a very small amount that really didn't roll.
Yeah, and you're right. And so one of the problems is a lot of the funding that the state puts together is they're meant for smaller communities. So for instance, we could go to the state and get $500,000 for a project, but our projects tend to be, orders of magnitude more expensive than that. And so some of the larger cities are having a hard time accessing that money because we, as a larger community, are not as competitive because we have a larger funding base. And in the amounts that the state is putting aside is just not really moving the needle for us, so to speak, as far as what we actually need to support our housing.
Right, if I can add the most recent funding was cities 25,000 and under.
Yeah.
And that was a random amount.
Okay.
And they're already looking at that. But then another big one with stormwater is that the state is kind of interested if it's water or sewer, because that seems to, resonate. Stormwater is it's kind of just neglected.
Yeah.
They really don't understand that stormwater even really exists.
Right. But you're right, Scott, I think I remember seeing that. There's it's not designed for cities like us, the funding that they're putting together.
There's cities like this that are being pushed to build more housing. And that's why I ask if the state is feeling any responsibility for the infrastructure of all that building.
We have asked and we have asked. But our asks are, are pretty high, right? We have a project out in, West Salem, right, that needs about $30 million worth of infrastructure improvements in order to open up some land for housing, right? So that's something either we as a city are gonna have to figure out how to pay for, kind of build it and they will come type of mentality, or we're gonna have to look for a state program that actually gets that moving.
So I'm thinking about some of the smaller ones, like they're at the east end of Croydon Street, where they've got that big development they're pushing up there on the hill. Water from that development will come down to Croydon Creek.
Yes.
Between Croydon Creek floods all the time now. How are you gonna fix that?
Well, we haven't figured out a good way. So that one right has been right for development for quite some time, but the cost of getting water to them is really expensive. The cost of getting wastewater services to them is expensive. And then we've got downstream stormwater issues that we would have to, and we don't want to be in a position where, we want to be saying no to developers that want to come and do the right thing and build houses. But at the same time, we have to be honest and say, this is what's going to be needed to support the development. There's only so much that we have available in system development charges to reimburse. And so when developers start to pencil all of those things out, it makes it cost prohibitive for some of these areas to develop, which is unfortunate. Yeah.
What I would say though is our design standards, and part of it's a requirement in order for us to have our municipal system discharge, is to develop green infrastructure and detention and filtration. And so when new developments come in, they have to model what the flows would have been if it's undeveloped and compare it to when it is developed, and the flow rates have to match. So you can control the flow amount, but you can't control the volume necessary. So you can maybe drop it down and keep it at, let's say, 5 cubic feet per second of water. Then you're just storing that water and it stays 5 cubic feet per second for many, many hours versus maybe it just being for a shorter period of time. But there are things that we're doing to try and help mitigate those, and developers are required to do it.
So, and I think one thing to point out is you probably know the statistics better than I do about how many green stormwater infrastructure basins are coming into our cities that we are responding. So when these things are built, the maintenance and all of that falls back on us.
Yeah.
And so while it's helping reduce how much water is getting into our local streams and creeks, it also puts an increased maintenance burden on our staff. Because we're adding, I think we have like 600 or 700 of them right now. And, and it falls on, our existing staff to try to maintain those. And I think, and I might be a little bit off on this, but the cost to maintain a stormwater basin is about, this is like $3 to $5 a square foot if you're just maintaining it and keeping it going. But if it gets into disrepair and you have to completely rebuild these things, I think it's somewhere in the range of $25 to $30 a square foot.
That's about right.
Yeah.
Well, if you read that article in this morning's paper about what's coming, it could be, we could have some heavy rain.
Yes.
That's what it is. We're here to talk about your plans. So it seems to me that all of that has to be talked about, how you're gonna plan for things like that. I don't think we're gonna have a flood like 64, but who knows?
So just to wrap up our master plan discussion. All 3 utility master plans are moving through the process. The wastewater master plan should be coming to council it's October, end of September, October, sometime in that time frame. Each plan has a 20-year planning horizon. So we're kind of looking out at you know, at that, we're also looking at what we talked about last time, which is the urban growth boundary build out. So what is the future of the system going to look like when we fully developed all the way up to our urban growth boundary? We've identified short-term water, stormwater, and wastewater master plan needs. So this is in the 1 to 5 year range of $366 to $406 million. With a total investment needed over 20 years, somewhere between 1.4 and 1.6 billion.
We don't like the B.
I don't like the
We don't
B
like-
either. No, but we can't get away from it, Counselor.
And I would just share, this is not unlike any agency that's out there. All agencies are facing the same thing and everyone struggles to do what they can. Meet the needs as best they can. So in a perfect world, this is what we have and this is what we'd be doing, but we know that we don't live in that world and we have to make the best of what we can and also be reasonable. So, but as time goes on, when the systems get older, at some point in time, these things are going to catch up with folks.
Yeah, and I would just say that, you know, what it really does for staff is it really makes us focus on prioritizing, right? And so we have to take a really hard look at the projects that we have in front of us and where are we going to invest the limited dollars that we do have to try to make sure that we are hitting the high priority projects as soon as we can and not letting some of this infrastructure get to a point of disrepair that's going to put us in some sort of emergency situation.
And we're gonna turn it over to Alan here very shortly to talk about the CIP. In context, you're gonna see how much we're allocating to the CIP now. It's significantly lower than what it would take to get to those numbers. So. Alan.
Oh, I got the controls right
Got
here.
it right here, man.
So thanks, everyone. Alan Dannon again, I'm the city engineer. And here to talk about the capital improvement plan because all of these projects go through the engineering division in one form or another. So talking about the CIP, today I'm just going to focus on the utility CIP because that's what we're here to talk about. It's our city utility, but I did want to highlight that this is just a portion of the overall city CIP for the next 5 years, which just went into effect on July 1. It's about $171.6 million in total project costs. That's with an M, not a B. And that represents about a little over 40% of the total city CIP, which is around $410 million. We have
For 1 year?
for 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah. We have 57 projects in the CIP this year. I was told I was not allowed to do a slide on each and every one of them, so come to my stand-up show to some data. And the CIP does include only newly programmed funding. So these numbers and these project numbers don't include past budgets that have already been approved. So projects that are backlogged or that are already working on that have some funding, that's not in these totals. So the actual number of what we're working on is a little higher.
And if I would just explain that, many of these projects, because they're large, it may take 2 or 3 or even 4 years to deliver. So some of that funding has already been approved. It's already sitting in the budget. The CIP only shows the delta amount that's needed to complete the entire funding package for the project.
Well, there could be a very big one coming down if you lose that court suit. And when they let all the water out of Troy, they were essentially ruining the water system.
I do have slides on that coming up.
We'll talk more about that.
Thing here is just, so the bulk of the funding here is from the utility rates, but the numbers do include some system development charges for developer reimbursable projects or some projects that we have with those growth components that make them eligible. But of the total here, about 4 million is SDCs, so the rest is utility rates.
Funded ongoing, or is it already, is the capital already sitting there for, how much of the capital is already there?
How much of this?
For that 171, yeah.
Yeah, so it's ongoing, and this table kind of shows it each year, the transfer that comes in from utility rates to capital year by year. So it's anywhere from, 31 to 38 million, and that 38 million number includes most of the SDCs because we don't program out developer reimbursements for 5 years because we just don't know what those are going to be from year to year. So I was just gonna kind of run through each category here. So starting with stormwater and picking up on a lot of the themes that Jason just talked about. Each one of these I just kind of broke down into categories of projects, kind of broadly. So regulatory and environmental and stormwater, some of it is dealing with the issues that Jason brought up, and that first bullet there is our DEQ retrofit project. So we have a permit, as Brian referenced, to discharge our storm system into the creeks in the Willamette River. And so as part of that, we're required to do work on our system where we go find opportunities to implement stormwater treatment or flood mitigation to mitigate some of the issues that Jason was talking about in terms of water quality or erosion in the creeks and that kind of thing. So this picture here isn't one of those projects, but it's a similar project that we've completed where it shows in a neighborhood, we acquired some property and built a stormwater detention basin with treatment. And those are the kind of opportunities we're looking for there. Other things in that regulatory category include temperature mitigation and tree planting. Although that's not a permit requirement, it kind of falls in that environmental category. The bulk of what we're spending is on fixing our system, rehabilitation and replacement. I'm gonna probably lapse and say R&R. So that's what I mean when I say that later.
It's not resting.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's the opposite. So an example of that is, and often what we do is pair that R&R work up with other projects. We're lucky enough to have the safety and livability bond going on right now with a lot of roadway projects. And so what we've done with those is make sure that if there's areas in those projects that have deteriorating utility infrastructure, we try to fix those with utility rate funds along with the bond project. So we don't build new pavement and then have to go cut it up later to replace a culvert or something like that. So the McGill-Chris culvert replacements that's in this program is a good example of that. There's several replacements along that project alignment that we're doing. The last category here is system. We don't do an awful lot of that. And you'll see that through each category. Most of the work we're doing is taking care of the system that we have. The SDC reimbursements to developers would fall in this category. And in stormwater, we do have one project this year where we are adding some new pipes in West Salem around Goldcrest Brook. And that's really, it is adding to our system, but it's sort of solving problems that are happening in Goldcrest Brook with past development that wasn't built to current standards, causing erosion in that stream. And so the new pipes we build will help divert some of that and create that storage and release it at those lesser rates, as Brian was talking about earlier. So kind of a notable project for us in stormwater. Moving on to wastewater, a few more categories here. Treatment is always the big one. So that's our Willow Lake treatment plant. The picture on the bottom right shows a recently completed project there where we made some hydraulic improvements. There's a lot of needs at Willow Lake. It's an old facility. A lot of the equipment out there is still original, built in the 60s and 70s. And so it needs a lot of love in the coming 5 years. So that there's 36 million budgeted for it here in the next 5 years. And that doesn't touch everything. One of the big ones is secondary clarifiers, which I won't go into great detail on wastewater treatment, but essentially separate solids from liquid so that we can run through the treatment process and discharge to the river. There's 4 of them out there. When the plant is running at full capacity, all 4 are needed or we will violate the terms of our permit. And they're all getting down to their last legs. So we have a program starting to basically rehab one every summer while the weather is dry and the plant is not running at full capacity. And that project is going to be executed really just in time because those clarifiers are very old. Yes.
So is the funding for that just coming out of the wastewater?
Utility rates.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right. Next category is sanitary sewer overflows. So similar, when we have heavy rain events, it's too much for our system because our system is very leaky. And so you often see the notification in the newspaper after a heavy storm that there was a sanitary sewer overflow or SSO at certain locations. And so one of the things that we try to do is correct those areas where we have restrictions in the system or pipes that have come into disrepair for whatever reason or another that are causing these overflows. One example that's in the CIP that we're working on right now is Manzanita Way, which is actually in Kaiser, but we under our IGA with Kaiser, we operate and do capital maintenance on their wastewater system. Rehabilitation and replacement, I talked about earlier, there's quite a bit here related to city bond projects. And we also have a programmatic amount set aside every year. It amounts to about $10 million over the 5 years for operations priorities that come up. So they're not specifically identified projects, but we find a pipe that needs lining or a pump station that needs a minor repair, and that money's set aside. And we have a team in engineering that works with operations to get those things done. Pumping in our system. So the system is large enough where we have quite a few pump stations that we need to get everything all the way up to Willow Lake up at Kaiser. So we have projects to work on several of those. The most notable one is the Ferry Street Pump Station, which is right downtown where Trade and Ferry and Front Street all come together. It's actually located below ground, right in that triangular area. It's an old facility. It's not safe to really access or work on. So we're pulling it up out of the ground and locating it.
What's that? Is that right at Magoo's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right there.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah. So we're relocating it right there to next to Magoo's, in a much more modern and safer facility. And then a few developer reimbursements in this category as well. So total over the 5 years in wastewater is about 65 million. Last category is water. There's been a lot of talk about this category lately. And we've done a lot of work at our Guerin Island treatment plant, but there's still things that need to be done out there. One of the opening pictures in this part of the presentation showed the filters that are being resanded. So for those that don't know, we have sand filters out there, and periodically our operators scrape off the top layer that collects the material from the river water. And over time, that 3 feet of sand gets scraped down, and when it reaches 18 inches, it's time to add new sand. And so that's about $1.5 million or more per filter to do that. So that's included here in the capital program on an annual basis. We try to do one filter. There's also work at Guerin Island around our source, our intake, to make sure that that's protected and will always function despite how the river changes over time. So we've got a big project coming up to do some work there to stabilize our intake area.
What's the minimum flow for your intake?
The minimum flow that we can kind of make maximum, our maximum daily is 700 CFS. Next category is transmission, and you all might have talked about this when you reviewing master plans on water. The $1 million here is for a feasibility study to really look at how to move forward with the concepts in the master plan for upgrading our transmission pipes that go from Guerin Island down to Turner, where Franzen Reservoir is. And that's actually a picture of Franzen Reservoir when it was drained on the right there. Skipping ahead to pumping and storage, we have a large project, about $30 million, to replace the floating cover on that structure and replace the liner while we're at it, since we'll have it down, and do some other work around that structure. Franzen Reservoir is about 90 million gallons. It's the primary storage for the base level of our water system. So it is a really important facility, and having that cover on it functioning is really important for water quality and meeting regulations. It's actually 2 cells, so we can take one down and work on it while the other one's full and still serves the city. And then when that one's done, we'll take that one, we'll bring that one up and then work on the second one. But it's a several-year project. It's a really big project and a really important project, about $30 million. I skipped over R&R, similar type of thing here where we're doing work along with other projects. State Street's a good example. So we have a bond project there from 12th to 17th. And that pipeline, that old pipeline in State Street is almost 100 years old, or maybe a little bit over now. So it's certainly time to replace it before we repave. And then one notable thing here, we don't build a lot of new, the city doesn't build, development builds new water pipe, but we are building a new water main with the Marine Drive bond project in West Salem. So I think that here as well. So that's a quick run through of the current CIP, what's coming. And you all, I think, talked about a lot of these issues probably with master plan. Water supply resiliency, so protecting our intake, those transmission lines that I mentioned. We've done work on alternate sources like groundwater related to the drawdown, continued work on that, and then maximizing the use of our aquifer storage and recovery facility at Woodland Sea Park. All of those will take lots of effort in the coming years. We talked about Willow Lake. So Willow Lake's permit to discharge treated wastewater to the Willamette is coming up for renewal. It's actually been expired since like 2009 or something like that. But they're telling us we're gonna get it here in the next year or two. So we'll get a draft permit for that. And when that happens, there's gonna be a lot, not just the maintenance work that I talked about at Willow Lake, but a lot of work that needs to be done to bring our discharge up to the standards that are in that new permit. So that'll be substantial. Seismic resiliency in our system. We've got some projects. Fairmont Reservoir is one that's coming in the current CIP, but there's many more. We're doing as much R&R as we can of our system, but as Jason pointed out with stormwater, and I'm sure with the other two as well, we're just, taking small bites of the big demand. And then related to stormwater flood risk reduction and dealing with some of those creek erosion issues, I think are gonna be things that we're thinking about for stormwater going forward. That's the CIP. I'm happy to take questions or.
Yeah, if there's any questions on it, that would be a good time to answer them. I will share, there's a lot there and we're not trying to just overwhelm everybody with all these things. Because we know that we can never get to all of them. We're a city just like any other cities in this country that have aging infrastructure. But we do have to be strategic and make sure we're putting our money in the right places as we go forward. Thank you. So some questions, Ken.
To what extent, the CIP is basically a budget for expenditure. To what extent are system charges that we're to set affect that?
That's good. So I think, just to restate the question, make sure I understand it. So to what extent do the utility rate changes affect the capital transfer? And maybe Mirla or Toby would be good ones to answer this, but I mean, with what we have now, we're able to keep that sort of $30+ million range. And I don't know if you guys want to expand on that.
That is what we currently have in the plan, yes. However, all these updates to all these master plans are, and then we have costs that kind of came through late last year as well. And so we definitely need to look at be strategic about our planning. But currently, yes, we have about $30 to $33 million every year. As part of
I think we had a metric, right? Of a 1% increase amounts to
1%, in really round terms, 1% is about $1,250,000 in terms of additional revenue.
So
Additional revenue towards CIP, just
Additional revenue to the entire operate, maintain, and build.
So the question, the 33 million is what percentage of the total revenue?
Oh, sorry, it's roughly a quarter.
Quarter? So if you raise 1%, you're gonna get, what'd you say? 1.2. So you pick up 400,000. What's the CIP?
Well,
If you say proportion.
yeah, I mean, the operational costs are fairly fixed. And so the float is usually in the CIP. So, all the resources, all the staff to operate the system, we start with that, and then the delta, whatever we can get ever goes to the CIP. So operational costs are going up, and I'll point out a few of those things here. And then the cost of projects are also going up, and so we're gonna have to factor all that in. And when we start with our next meeting, we're gonna kind of share where we landed 2 years ago with the rates and what really happened and where we could spend, because some things came in, as Merla mentioned, that were more expensive. PERS went up, our union contracts got negotiated, or costs that exceeded what we thought they were gonna be at the time, and so that left them less money for the utility, which put a little bit of a burden on us. So we'll look at all that stuff together, and then as we talk about what rates we should set, factor the CIP part of the equation into that, if we want to try and get 35 or 40 million or something to try and catch up on some of these things, that would mean once we get above the operational cost, then that would all go into CIP. And I guess to follow up on your question, Ken, about the SDCs and how that factors in. It factors into the capacity projects, but only up to the amount of what we collect. And what has happened is, whenever developers go in, they're generally developing in areas where they have to upsize the piping or the networks. And so they're building something that's a reimbursement from the SDCs. So we're not getting that at the SDCs. We're actually having to reimburse them with the money that we have, and it's hard to put it towards actual city projects, say at Willow Lake or the water treatment plant, which is a place you want to do that. If you're adding capacity to those big systems, that's what an SDC is partially for. So we have it in our plan to take a look at the SDCs, I think.
Yay.
I forgot, I don't remember what it was, January, February, at some point. Next calendar year, we'll start looking at those and see what we need to do. But, unfortunately with those, the more you charge so that you can collect more money to spend it, the higher the cost of homes that go, because it all factors into that. So it's just like it's a tough balance, but anyway, but it doesn't play a role. It's just unfortunately not that big of a role for us right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know that we're going to talk about leachate and PFAS a little bit later, but my question is more specific to the Willow Lake permit. If it's 2009, will we be seeing some permit requirements on what levels PFAS and leachate are coming in, going out?
I don't know that we've heard anything on PFAS yet, because there's a high, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit.
Okay.
There aren't any regulations in Oregon on it right now. But we are expecting some other things. So
okay,
there's a lot of things we treat for up there. And generally, whenever they issue one of those new permits, it's got more
stuff in
it than the last one had. So if they want to put it out another 10 years, we'd be fine with that. So we're not calling them up asking them to
certainly.
give us a new permit.
Thank you. I'll look forward to hearing.
Sure. So I wanted to go back to the Detroit discussion and talk a little bit more about what we did this last year. So Jason's slide in the master plan, it showed our average daily demand is in the summertime. And if you remember, it's around 50 million gallons a day. What that demand is in the wintertime, it's about 25 million gallons a day. And the wintertime is when the Detroit drawdown would happen. So fortunately, it's happening when our demand is the lowest. Unfortunately, what we talked about, the sediment loading is likely going to require us to close our gate and try and get by on groundwater or ASR system, the city Kaiser. And so we kind of knew that going into it. And so we had made the emergency declaration that council actually approved so that we could actually procure things faster. And these are where we focused our attention. So we set aside about $8 million and we drilled 3 additional wells. Actually, we drilled 4 additional wells at Guerin Island. One of them didn't produce, so we actually were able to use only 3 of them. We had an intertie with the city of Kaiser. We had 2 interties, but one was not developed. So we developed a second intertie so that we can get emergency water from them. Which is going to be, I'll show you in a slide here in a minute how that really helped us out. Was actually the best help of all the things we did. We accelerated resanding one of those filters. So Alan talked about making sure our filters are ready so that if we get turbidity and somehow it affects any of our filters, we at least have a new one that we can use if we clog up some of our older ones. And then we filled our aqua storage and recovery reservoir in South Salem to the fullest that we know it's ever been. I think generally when we fill it, we'd be around 500 million gallons of water, maybe a little bit more, but we pushed it up to where we believe we got 1 billion gallons in it to prepare just in case we're going to have to rely on it. So that also included some work with some well work out there so we can pull the water out to make sure that we can use what's out there. So those are the things we did, considering that we're probably gonna have to close our gate at Guerin Island and rely on other sources. And so what that did for us was, I broke down to show what we can produce at Guerin Island with the river if we were able to use it. Because that's basically our baseline. If we can't use it, this is how we came up with, these projects so that we know that we can at least get by this winter and for a few winters. And that is, we had existing wells already at Guerin Island that produced about 6.8 million gallons a day. With the 3 wells that we put in, and we developed another one that had been drilled previously. Actually, 2 other ones that we had drilled previously, we were able to get about 2.1 million gallons. There are under drains around all the sand filters out there that also collect groundwater. And so depending on the time of year and how we're using the system, there's a range that we can get about 0.8 to 5.4 million gallons of water. Aquifer storage and recovery system, depending on the needs and the zone of the system, will be somewhere between 3 and 7.2 million gallons a day. And then the first intertie at Cherry with the city of Kaiser, which we actually used last winter for a period of time when we had the storm in December, we had to close the gate. We can get between 4 and 4.6 million gallons of water a day. And then the second one that we developed was the Wastewater intertie. We can get in there to 3.8 to 4.3. So you put all that together, and if you remember that winter peak is about 25 million gallons a day, that range gives us basically almost 25 to 30 million gallons. What concerns us about it is if we lose any one of those and, you know, a pump goes out at one of the wells or a pump goes out with the intertie, that can all of a sudden start putting us in a situation that would be very uncomfortable. But we've done everything we could in the short time period to get us to where we know we can get through the winter if we have to. So ultimately, our main goal would be, you know, the Corps figures out a way to do what they're gonna do so that it doesn't affect our filters and we can continue to use our slow sand filters at Guerin Island and that river water. And then we don't have to worry about this stuff. It's still always good to have resiliency. But we just can't predict what's gonna happen. So you had mentioned the lawsuit fails. You know, multiple lawsuits fail, then we have to look at what are we gonna do next? And we believe we can develop systems to use more of that ASR system. I think, what about another 7.5 million gallons we could probably get out of it if we haul some more pipes in town and put some valve in so that we can actually get the water where it needs to go. That would be
Aquifer?
from the aquifer.
Your max out of the billion is up to 7.2. Is that what it said? Out of the billion gallons, it's underneath 7.2 a day.
That's all we could get. Yeah, that's the max we could get now. So if we can do some other system upgrades, we could probably move that up to 15-ish.
Yeah.
So that would be the next step, but that takes more work, harder work, more difficult than what we've already done.
How much estimated cost?
I don't know that we have a hard number on that yet, but it's
between
5 billion wells.
10 to 15 million.
Frozen trees.
yeah, there you go. But that's what we're looking at next. So, you know, we'll see what happens. You know, we filed a motion for preliminary injunction last week. The county had filed one, I think, a couple weeks before that. So, things are in motion. I guess we'll see what happens with it, but we do have a plan for what that next step would be, and it's really further getting better use out of the ASR system.
The challenge is this is gonna go on every year they do this.
It's gonna go on every year if they do it.
It's just
Yeah.
not 1 year.
That's right.
The turbidity issues will be up front, but after that, flow will be the issue.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, one thing that Alan talked about, what we're doing to protect our intake. So there's a big, we're calling it a flow maintenance project. But what it is, it's really a huge dredging project to dredge out that river so that we can ensure that the water in the river gets to where our intake is located. We had to do a semi-emergency one this last year because that December storm also left a lot of sediment and debris in a place in the channel where the water was not going to make it to a channel where we take the water. And so we worked with the water control district and they the rules they have to follow are a little bit less than ours. Their irrigation, you know, we're municipal water supply. They were able to get permits and we actually did about 3,000 yards of material that we ended up dredging and moving around. Otherwise, we'd have had a trouble meeting our water demand this summer, but that work succeeded, and if we had to, we could get 70 million gallons of water a day out there, right? But what's been needed, and we've been monitoring the river since 2012 when we started seeing ships. There's a larger project that does it in a much more significant way, and I don't remember whether it's 20 or 30,000.
10 to 15.
10 to 15, okay. 10 to 15,000 yards of material that'll have to get moved around. And we think that that will help us significantly into the future, but we also have a dam there that is causing all this buildup to happen behind the dam because it slows the water down all of a sudden in the wintertime when all the big sediment is coming down. It all deposits in the channel, and then it affects how we can get water to our intake. So that dam replacement is something that is not in the 5-year CIP, although I guess we start.
There's some
early design work
early design funding
in it, but that is another big project that we're gonna have to do. And so that and our transmission main are things that are very important. And I know we're running out of time, so I want to hit leachate here real quick and biosolids. Anyway, the Detroit stuff is definitely affecting our operations. The other thing that has affected our operations is, I think everyone's heard enough about PFAS on the news now to know that they're the polyfluoroalkyl substances that don't go away. People call them forever chemicals. Well, one place where they end up is our wastewater. And our wastewater is regulated by the DEQ. So we have that permit that Dale spoke about earlier. You asked, are they going to have PFAS requirements in it when the new permit comes out? I don't know that we're hearing that yet. However, there's other PFAS requirements that are out there that are affecting us or making us look deeper into how we operate our systems. Drinking water, there's already 6 compounds that have thresholds that we have to meet. Fortunately, we have not detected any in our drinking water. We've got a good drinking water source, so that's good. But the DEQ is now moving into non-drinking water and pointing out these 6 compounds as hazardous waste. And so they're really looking at doing making rules on how they're going to regulate that going forward. And unfortunately, if you go to the next slide, this PFAS ends up in normal wastewater. So anyone that is even flushing their toilet, using their sink, doing whatever they're doing, just the things we do every day have PFAS in it. So there's a level of PFAS that enters that wastewater stream there. We also accept leachate from 3 different landfills, although primarily now it's only coming from one, and that's Coffin Butte. Leachate is, for lack of the term, and it's kind of gross, it's basically garbage juice. So when it rains and that rain percolates through the soils into the landfill, it's got to go somewhere. And at the bottom of the landfill, there are under drains.
There's something new, it's called garbage juice.
So there you go. The under drains collect that, and then they have to do something with it. And as being a large wastewater treatment plant, we have had permits to allow them to bring their leachate into our system. I think we're into year 5 now. It may have been a little bit longer, but we're approaching 2027 is the last year. But that leachate, because it percolates through all that trash and all the things that go in a landfill, actually has pretty high concentrations of PFAS in it. And so that is something that we have to deal with. And this next slide here, I'll show you the difference between, hard to read there, what all of us enter into our systems is that table to the left there. It shows just 3 of the main elements, PFOA, PFOS, and PFBS. So without leachate, those are the values that we're seeing. When we add leachate into our system, that middle graph is what we see with the leachate. So not much change on the PFOS, some change on the PFOA, but much more on the PFBS. And so one of the things we're talking internally about, and we mentioned at Coffin Butte, is whether or not we're gonna require some type of pre-treatment from them, or we're gonna want to continue to extend that permit beyond 2027. Something we're thinking about, we're talking about, and we have not made any decisions on it. But it's either gonna have likely be shut that off and not accept it anymore, or require some type of pre-treatment, so what we get is not as hot as what we're receiving now. Anyway, conventional wastewater treatment plants really do not treat PFAS. It does break some of the long chains down, and if you go back to the last slide, some of those chemical chains up there in the circle on the left upper and the left lower, all the different, can't read them here. I think they're chlorides that are attached into the chemistry of the PFAS. It can take some of those really long chains and shorten them, but it still ends up with PFAS in the water that we discharge, and it ends up in our biosolids. So if you go ahead and go forward. So what happens at Willow Lake? I just talked about how some of it gets decomposed into short chains. But ultimately, we have it in our effluent, and that table before was showing our effluent without leachate, with leachate, and then the third one was if we accepted more leachate, it would increase in volume. We've done a lot of testing since 2023. The Willamette River itself, we detect upstream of where our discharge point is about 0.98 parts per trillion. Downstream of our discharge, it increased to about 3.17 parts per trillion. So we are definitely adding it to the system. However, the drinking water threshold is 4 parts per billion, so it's still, what's happening with us is not affecting to where the water, you couldn't drink the water, but it's still, there still is an impact, which is why we got to figure out if we're going to keep accepting it, what type of pre-treatment we would require. That doesn't really change the way we process wastewater, so there's really not a cost to it. It's just, this is the outcome of it, because there's really nothing that we can do to get rid of it at this point in time. But it does affect our biosolids. And so we've tested our biosolids. These are the numbers there. You know, PFO was about 1.2 parts per billion. Notice now we're talking parts per billion and solids versus drinking water. PFOS is about 12. Oregon doesn't have any regulations regarding it, but states across the country are adopting regulations. Maine has been the most stringent for the longest period of time. They do not allow people to take biosolids and spread them on farm fields for fertilizer anymore. Some states have different levels. A few years ago, when we looked at this, we were comparing ourselves to Michigan and Wisconsin, which had a threshold of about 20 parts per billion. And if it exceeded that, then you couldn't take it to land or to farm fields anymore to spread it. So because we fell under that, we generally felt okay, but with the landscape changing and more lawsuits and states becoming, getting more stricter with the thresholds, we made a decision this last fall, a year ago, that we'd start hauling it to landfills instead of sending it out to farmers to land apply on their farm fields. So there is a cost to that we've evaluated it, and it's about between $700,000 and $800,000 a year more to send it to a landfill than it was to send it out to farm fields where they would use it for fertilizer. So when we talk about operational changes, that's an operational change that we made just based on the risk. And we had outside legal counsel telling us, if you really want to protect yourself, you probably need to stop that operation. And so, it's a portion of it now. Coffin Butte is more expensive to take it to. So I think it's Wasco is the cheapest one. And so most of it's going to Wasco, but because it built up this last year, we're taking some of it to Coffin Butte too, so we can clear it out before the winter rains come. We store it outside, and if it sits out in the rain, it gets soggy and wet, and they got to reprocess it. And, you know, we don't want it to do with that. So I know I ran late, but I did want to get that in. It's just, those are some of the things that we have to focus on. And when we talk operational costs, some of those aren't things we really expected, but they do impact us.
Is there any technology for treatment of those long chain?
They are. So some of this pre-treatment, I think it's called foam fractionation, can actually take a large percentage of it out, but it doesn't take all of it out.
Then you have the foam.
Yeah, that's still yeah, you still have the foam, but it's a lesser volume, but you still have to do something with it. There's high heat incinerators, I've heard that you can use on biosolids, but a lot of that technology is still evolving, and there probably will be more over time. But yeah, it's nothing that we think would work well for us as a large plant, because we can't separate our waste streams. And so
Work with the folks who are bringing the
the
garbage
leach,
issue.
yeah.
Them do it.
Yeah, so if they can do it, they're just treating the high concentrated stuff that they deliver, so. That's the best way, and so we've had some preliminary discussion, but we need to see more data.
Anyone else have any questions?
May I just offer, I would like us to, and this might be more of city instead of this, to really consider communications to our citizens about water conservation, even if we have flooding. I mean, I think people need to understand that we need to conserve our potable water. Because again, future weather patterns that we don't know about, and all of the risks we have with pump stations and things. So I'm just thinking that we might want to consider having our communications team work on water conservation ideas.
We can certainly have them do that. It's always a good thing. You know, it never hurts.
It's easy to think we have so much water when we have rain. We just turn on the tap and have water. Thank you.
So if there's nothing else, our next meeting will be Friday, September 25th, same times, place.
Same time, same place, and like I said, we'll show you the base rates of what were approved last time, and then how things went these last couple of years, and then we'll start talking about, you know, what we might want to do going forward.
Thank you.